Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. She had just stepped out in a white, below-the-knee dress that hugged her new figure. Cameras flashed, headlines followed, and social media couldn't stop talking. Gayle King, legendary journalist, CBS Morning's co-anchor, best-selling author, and lifelong best friend to Oprah Winfrey, was glowing at a star-studded premiere in New York City. The event was centered on a powerful and emotional documentary about Celine Dion's battle with a rare neurological disorder. But as Gayle posed for photos and exchanged warm smiles with fellow celebrities, fans weren't just buzzing about the film or her effortlessly glamorous ensemble. They were whispering about something else, something that sparked speculation and concern. It wasn't the dress or the hair or the golden heels. It was the dramatic change in her appearance, the weight loss, the undeniable transformation. She looked radiant. That much was clear. Her hair was styled in soft, loose waves, her makeup flawless, her skin glowing. But the internet was less focused on the polish and more on the question behind it. Was it Ozempic? Was it another new weight loss drug? Was it something more serious? Rumors began to swirl, especially in light of her best friend Oprah recently acknowledging her own use of weight loss medications. Gayle hadn't said a word about it. Not a confirmation, not a denial. For someone who had spent years being unflinchingly honest about everything from relationships to political turmoil, her silence stood out. It wasn't just quiet. It was loud in its own way. Suspicious even. People began looking closer. Every photo, every public appearance became a data point in the ongoing conversation. When Gayle graced the cover of Sports Illustrated's swimsuit edition at 69, it was a moment of celebration and awe. She posed with confidence, humorously telling reporters she'd eaten a cheeseburger before the shoot and requested tasteful cleavage. But while the world applauded the milestone, a lingering question remained. Why now? Why this transformation, so sudden and so pronounced? Gayle spoke of working out consistently, 5 to 6 days a week, and said she felt better than ever. But others quietly questioned whether something else was going on. There was a difference, not just in the way she looked, but in her energy. Her emotional tone had shifted. Behind the ever-confident smile, behind the practiced cheer of a seasoned broadcaster, there was a new fragility. In May 2022, Gayle had penned a deeply personal piece reflecting on mental health. She wrote about the stigma surrounding it, the way people mask their pain, and how too often the brightest faces hide the darkest battles. Her reflection on Cheslie Kryst's tragic death, the former Miss USA who took her life at just 30, was raw and chilling. Gayle revealed she had spoken to Cheslie's mother and shared the line from the suicide note that haunted her most. "Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did everything right." That line, Gayle said, shattered her. You could hear it in her voice when she spoke about it on air. You could see it in her eyes. For someone who had always been composed, that crack in the armor said everything. She admitted that suffering doesn't always look like sadness, that someone can be laughing, smiling, and still be on the edge. That vulnerability stuck with viewers. It stayed with them when they later noticed Gayle beginning to show subtle changes, not just physically, but emotionally. Later that year, she revealed on air that Oprah had been hospitalized with a severe stomach illness that caused dehydration. She shared it gently, almost hesitantly, saying she hoped Oprah wouldn't be mad at her for making it public. But what stood out most wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Her voice trembled ever so slightly, her expression uneasy. Fans and colleagues alike noted that Gayle looked shaken, more affected than the moment seemed to warrant. It was as if health, hers or someone else's, had become more than a passing topic. It had become personal. Soon after, Gayle began skipping major events. She was seen less often outside her CBS duties. When she did appear, the change in her physical presence was unmistakable. She moved slower, sometimes with noticeable stiffness, while her co-hosts praised her wellness journey, attributing her appearance to discipline and clean living. Those close to her noticed something else. There were longer pauses between segments, subtle winces as she shifted in her chair, and moments where she seemed to zone out, gathering herself before returning to the camera. She continued to make jokes, remained warm and professional, but the sparkle in her eyes sometimes dimmed. By early 2024, the whispers began to turn inward. Not from gossip sites, but from CBS insiders, people who worked alongside her every day. One producer mentioned that Gayle had broken down in tears during a commercial break, something entirely out of character. Another said she had received unexpected medical news she was struggling to process. And then, the unthinkable happened. Gayle took several days off from CBS mornings, a rarity in her decades-long career. The official word was that it was pre-scheduled time off, but few believed it. Those who knew her best sensed something deeper, something unspoken. Her return to the show was gentle, measured. She smiled as always, but her tone had changed. In one particularly emotional segment, she opened up about how hard it is for people in the public eye to talk about pain. Not because they don't feel it, but because they don't think the world is ready to hear it. She didn't say she was struggling, but the subtext rang loud and clear. Whatever Gayle King was going through, it wasn't just about image or aging or self-care. It was about something internal, something unresolved, something still unfolding. Silence from Gayle and the network was deafening. No official statements were released, no clarifications made. And when she finally returned to CBS mornings after those days away, something had undeniably shifted. She looked poised, polished, and ready to pick up right where she left off. But those who had watched her for years could sense the subtle change. It wasn't in her words or her wardrobe. It was in her eyes, the way she held herself. There was a quiet determination to smile through it, to push forward as if nothing had happened. But even the most casual viewer could feel the weight behind her grin. The sparkle that once radiated so effortlessly had dimmed ever so slightly. Then came the unexpected revelation. Though not confirmed publicly, sources close to Gayle revealed that she had recently been diagnosed with a serious, but still undisclosed, health condition. Something significant enough to require immediate and lasting lifestyle changes. Something that altered her relationship with her own body and her future. It wasn't simply about weight loss or appearance. It was about survival. She was suddenly faced with the question she'd never had to consider before. Could she continue doing the job she loved with the same energy, vigor, and stamina that had defined her career for decades? It wasn't a decision she faced alone. Through every career triumph, heartbreak, viral headline, and behind-the-scenes moment, one person remained a constant: Oprah Winfrey. Their friendship, one of the most enduring and iconic in media history, didn't begin under studio lights or at celebrity-packed galas. It began humbly back in 1976 in a Baltimore newsroom. Gayle was a young production assistant at WJZ-TV, doing all the grunt work no one else wanted. Oprah, just a few years older, was already an on-air talent, making her name known in local television. Their bond wasn't instant fame. It was forged over late-night coffee runs, shared frustrations, and snowstorms that led to impromptu sleepovers. They leaned on each other when no one was watching, before the world cared. As their careers took divergent paths, their closeness never wavered. Gayle trained as a reporter at WUSA TV in Washington, D.C., then anchored in Kansas City and Hartford, building her own formidable career. Meanwhile, Oprah soared into national fame, eventually becoming a global force with The Oprah Winfrey Show. But when Oprah launched O, the Oprah magazine in 1999, she insisted Gayle join her as editor-at-large. Years later, when Gayle's own talk show didn't last, Oprah didn't let it define her. She stood by her side, encouraging her as she took on a bold new role at CBS Mornings, a position that would cement Gayle's own legacy in journalism. They shared not just career milestones, but life itself. They were there for each other through divorces, personal grief, and family challenges. Oprah was Auntie O to Gayle's children, Kirby and Will, while Gayle provided Oprah with grounded, emotional support away from the spotlight. Despite endless public curiosity and inappropriate speculation about the nature of their relationship, They always answered with grace. Oprah famously addressed the rumors in a 2010 Barbara Walters interview, calling Gayle the sister I never had. And when the topic arose again in 2024, they simply laughed it off. They didn't need definitions. Their connection was built on trust, not titles. When Gayle's weight loss became the center of public conversation in early 2024, fueled by whispers of Ozempic and Hollywood shortcuts, very few knew the truth. The reality behind the transformation was much more serious than a trendy fix. It involved doctor visits, tests, and a major shift in how she lived. But Gayle wasn't looking for pity or applause. She wanted space. She needed support. And no one offered that more completely than Oprah. The two continued appearing together, at galas, on red carpets, in rare joint interviews. But there was a noticeable shift in their dynamic. Oprah watched Gayle with more attentiveness. There was a protectiveness in her gaze that hadn't been there before. And Gayle, though still eloquent and witty, seemed more cautious with her words, more aware of her own fragility. Then in June 2024, roles reversed. Oprah was rushed to the emergency room after a severe stomach virus left her dangerously dehydrated, and it was Gayle who delivered the news to the world. On air, she shared the update carefully, affectionately, but visibly shaken. It was a moment that underscored not just their mutual love, but how deeply intertwined their lives had become. In times of crisis, they were each other's home. In a world obsessed with spectacle, their friendship remained the rarest kind of truth. Constant, unconditional, and unbreakable. She was doing what she'd always done, commanding the room, owning the moment, and reminding everyone that she was still very much in charge. Gayle had a way of disarming people, even the most seasoned interviewers. So, when she asked Alex Cooper, known for her provocative style, an unfiltered question about her sex life and marriage dynamics, it wasn't meant to shock. It was meant to shift the energy. It was classic Gayle, witty, fearless, and just unpredictable, enough to make everyone sit up. The producers scrambled, trying to signal her to pivot, worried about the FCC, worried about headlines. But Gayle didn't flinch. She kept eye contact, grinned, and leaned into the moment with her signature poise. The internet erupted almost immediately. Clips circulated within minutes. Some applauded her for being unbothered and bold. Others called it inappropriate for morning television. But to those who knew her career, who had followed her evolution from behind-the-scenes assistant to national icon, it was clear. This wasn't a mistake. This was a statement. Gayle was reminding people that she wasn't done, not yet. She still had her voice, her presence, and her spark. But beneath that moment of levity, beneath the viral sound bites and social media buzz, there was something else, something heavier, because Gayle knew that one moment on air didn't erase what was happening off screen. Her body still ached in quiet moments. The fatigue still lingered in ways that workouts and water couldn't fix. The diagnosis hadn't gone away. She was facing a future that demanded she slow down and that terrified her. Television had always been her rhythm. Early mornings, breaking news, controlled chaos. To step away from that wasn't just retiring from a job. It was like removing a piece of herself. And yet, for all the fear, there was also a strange peace settling in. A clarity. Maybe it was watching Oprah go through her own health scare. Maybe it was seeing how little warning life gives. Or maybe it was just that Gayle, for the first time in decades, was ready to put herself first. She had spent years holding it together, through co-anchor scandals, newsroom politics, intense public scrutiny. She had been the reliable one, the one who never cracked on air, the one who always had the right words, even when the world was falling apart. But now, she was tired, not defeated, just ready to figure out what the next chapter looked like. At CBS, change was in the air. The studio move, the budget cuts, the growing uncertainty. It all seemed to mirror Gayle's internal shift. She wasn't the only one reconsidering what came next. Anchors and staff whispered in hallways, wondering, Who might be let go next? Who might jump ship? The morale was low, the future hazy. But through it all, Gayle kept showing up. And that moment with Alex Cooper, playful and unexpected, reminded everyone why she'd lasted so long. Not because she played it safe, but because she always brought herself fully to the room. Still, privately, she had decisions to make. Was it time to leave while she was still on top? Or should she ride it out? One more season, one more interview, one more headline? Friends said she was torn, that she'd been making more time for family, reflecting more deeply, talking about legacy in ways she never had before. Oprah, always protective, always honest, was said to be gently encouraging her to choose peace over pressure, to walk away on her own terms. Because if anyone had earned that right, it was Gayle King. Gayle King's journey has never followed a traditional script, so it's no surprise that her next chapter would be written among the stars, literally. At 70, an age when most people are considering quiet retirements or slowing down, Gayle is buckling into a rocket, launching into space as part of Blue Origin's historic all-female crew. The mere fact that she was chosen speaks volumes, not just about her celebrity status, but about her enduring relevance, her curiosity, her sense of adventure. For Gayle, this isn't just a publicity stunt or a bucket list moment. It's a culmination. After decades telling other people's stories, she is now becoming one. As she suits up next to fellow passengers like Katy Perry, Lauren Sanchez, and NASA scientist Dr. Aisha Fielding, she's not just crossing a physical boundary into space, she's crossing a symbolic one. She's stepping into a part of life that defies convention, that says growth and wonder don't stop at any age. But what makes this even more profound is that she's doing it in the midst of personal transformation. Behind the high-profile launch, behind the polished interviews and the dazzling smiles, there's a quiet truth reshaping everything: her health. The diagnosis she received earlier this year, still undisclosed to the public, has acted like a lens, bringing her priorities into sharper focus. It's not about fear or defeat, it's about awareness. Mortality, after all, has a way of distilling what matters. For someone like Gayle, who's spent a lifetime in service of others' narratives, there's finally a need to own hers, to choose peace over pressure, vitality over visibility, and maybe even solitude over spotlight. There's also family. Just months before her planned spaceflight, Gayle experienced one of life's most joyful milestones, her only son William's wedding to Elise Smith. The ceremony, held at Oprah's Montecito estate, was as warm and intentional as the people involved. Oprah, always the gracious host, opened her home and her heart, making jokes about venue prices and dancing with guests well into the night. For Gayle, though, it wasn't the flowers or the grandeur that struck her. It was the vows. When her son stood before his bride and said, "I know the man I am, but with you, I know the man I want to be." She felt the world shift. That moment, raw and real, meant more to her than any Emmy or ratings bump. It was a reminder that love, deep, transformative love, is what she wants more of now, and not just romantic love, familial love, self-love. The kind of love that slows you down just enough to savor what's right in front of you, which is why, even as she remained a steady presence at CBS mornings, the whispers about her exit started to grow louder. Insiders say the network's abrupt decisions, like the sudden move from Times Square to a less prestigious studio space, felt like a betrayal. Gayle, who had signed on for another year amidst ongoing cutbacks and internal chaos, wasn't even consulted about the shift. Her beautifully curated office, a space that had been her anchor for years, was stripped away without warning. And while she didn't storm out or cause a scene, she made it known: respect isn't negotiable. She'd given CBS loyalty, leadership, and levity when the network needed it most. Now, she expected that same dignity in return. And yet, despite the mounting tensions and her own internal reckoning, She continued to bring her full self to the job. That's why the moment with Alex Cooper mattered so much. It wasn't just a cheeky question. It was a masterclass in television. Gayle proved once again that she could shift tones effortlessly, capture viral attention, and connect with viewers in ways younger hosts can only dream of. That moment became a snapshot of her legacy, unfiltered, brilliant, and impossibly relevant. But she knows, even if her audience doesn't, that relevance isn't everything. What she craves now is something quieter but just as profound. A life with more mornings that start with coffee on her own terms, more nights spent with family instead of prepping for early calls, and more time to ask herself questions she never had the space to explore. Who is Gayle King when the cameras aren't rolling? What else does she want to see, feel, become? Her spaceflight will mark a physical departure from Earth, but metaphorically, it's her first real leap into the unknown in decades. She's not walking away from something broken. She's stepping towards something bigger. She's trading deadlines for discovery, control rooms for constellations, and in doing so, she's offering a final lesson to her viewers. Reinvention isn't about turning your back on the past. It's about honoring it so deeply that you dare to imagine something even greater. For Gayle, this isn't an ending. It's her most powerful beginning yet.